doing? Yes, it's me, Alex, and I did get a new job. I'm now currently relocated to the office of Gothic Thoughts. Yeah, my desk is very messy. My office is very messy. The person who left this position left it in quite a mess, but we can't really blame people, can we? They did leave me some incense, which I'm lighting, which is nice. But you know what? Really, it's been dead quiet. You're my first visitor. So I hope you'll bear with me. I'm shocked that you made it here in this rain. I am surprised that you made it, but I'm very happy that you did, because I could use some company. It's getting a little weird in here. You hear that? I can't tell if that's airplanes or thunder, but it's really storming out there. Would you like some coffee? Speaking of Gothic, I'm gonna tell you what's Gothic. Plain black coffee. In fact, I have a French press here. Let me go ahead and do it. Yeah, this makes me feel like a medieval doing a French press, right? Like a maiden at a well. Yeah, just pressing that. Okay, let me pour you some coffee. Okay. Have you heard Katie Lang's Black Coffee, her song Black Coffee? It's a lesbian anthem, by the way. This is not the Office of Lesbianism, to clarify. That's across the street. Yeah, I didn't apply there because wherever I go is the Office of Lesbianism. As far as I'm concerned, I carry that in my heart, but they don't know that. They don't need to know that. It's cooler to be over here anyway. Alright, I poured you some coffee. It's completely black. We don't own cream or sugar. So, I hope you enjoy. Good luck, it's strong. Okay, so you've got your coffee. I've got my coffees right here. There it is. It's in a brown mug. Yours is in gray. And I'm wearing black. Seems appropriate. So how does this work here in this office? Well, I've got my computer right here in front of me on my desk. And pretty much, I'm just going to tell you our basic philosophy here, and then pretty much 5 main ideas that I'm responsible for archiving and collecting. So we keep different Gothic records. I try and add to it. If I do a good job, I get to keep my job. And if I do a bad job, I will be fired. To be honest, I don't know who my boss is. I've never seen another living soul. It's just me. Do you hear the thunder? Somehow, I will be fired if I do a bad job, and I don't want to know what that looks like. So, as the rain is coming down pretty hard, I'm going to share with you Gothic philosophy and the 5 things. Okay, so you're settled over there. Absolutely. Okay. What are Gothic thoughts anyway? Why do we need an office for them? Why care and collect them? Well, probably because they're just very interesting, and they provide a relief from a life that is more boring. Maybe it provides a relief from these sterile elements of the world, I guess. Modernity, perhaps. Yeah, you know, Gothic the spooky. Gothic thinking pretty much tends to focus on the elements of the human psyche and nature and what is hidden in the world, what you can't see. Like ghosts and hauntings. And Gothic thought explores contradiction. also interested in the sublime. Yes, thank you. I think I'm doing a good job. I think it's, I'm learning. I've got it pretty much memorized. But, yeah, that's pretty much it. It's wrapped in aesthetics of darkness and decay, but beauty. But beauty and beauty. Both those words. So Gothic thinking tends to be quite creative and philosophical, don't you think? Poetic. Yeah, very poetic. So it's cool. It really does kind of provide an answer to the world that can be hegemonic and boring. So it's fun to collect Gothic thinking, and probably important as, dare I say, a political act. Dare I say that? I did say that. I guess I dared to. Gothic thinking is really quite special and quite magical. There's one really broad tenet, maybe, about Gothic thinking, and that's that it is maybe resting on the premise that our foundational reality, quotation marks, is just not enough. It's just not enough to live on that really flat plane of existence, right? It's the starter package version of the world that we're like handed, in like the metaphor of a video game. It's just you open up your backpack and like look down. There it is. Your basic map of the world. It's quite simple. And Gothic thinking rests on the premise that that's just not enough. The reality underneath the reality and above the reality is reality. Does that make sense? Like more interesting that way. So it's a bit of expansive thinking. I think Gothicness is like a slice of this cake of depth. And yeah, there are other things in the cake, like other kinds of deep thinking that you can take from, and Goth is just like one that looks kind of a certain way. But I think that's why people like Gothic things, is because I think people know and crave anything that represents these other sides of the coin, more expansive map. Yeah, people like that dark stuff anyway. We're all a bunch of freaks, so we like that, That's why I like it. Okay, so what are the freaks liking? Well, to be helpful in our curation of Gothic things, yeah, like, we have to have some curation. For example, this is rock candy. The previous person left me a bunch of this candy. It's, so, what? The candy, I can't read this label. But you put it in your mouth and it, like, pops on your tongue. It's like popping candy. Yeah. Why has it got a mouse on it? I don't know why it's got a mouse on it. The Santa mouse popping candy. Would this be considered Gothic? What do you think? You think that's Goth? I don't know. We have to have some criteria. Should we save it or not? Put it in the archive or no? Well, I have 5 maybe guiding principles. They're not the only ones, but they're helpful. So I'm gonna read them to you. Okay, I'm gonna read them because we're gonna talk about them. Okay. The 5. How about this? How about this? All right. Okay. So these are the ideas that help curate. The first one is that we here at the archive and Gothicness, we embrace the sublime, not by mastering it, but by honoring and engaging with it. So that's kind of like the theme. Number 2, that we recognize the limits of rationality, because complexity is real. Number 3, that it's okay to to be sad and melancholic, and that when you share that, it creates culture and connection and art. So you don't need to repress that. Number 4, that human nature is not just dual, but prismatic and multimodal or fluid, or enter any metaphor that you want for multiplicity and choice. And 5, finally, that there is beauty in age, evolution, and decay, and that all things decay except for the fundamental generating principle, or the generating element itself, which is probably love, but I don't know. We don't know. So that's it. If I look at something and it's hitting some of these 5 targets, it might be kind of gothic. So like the popping candy, it definitely hits number 2. The limits of rationality and that complexity is real. I mean, yeah, this might be a little gothic. But we're gonna analyze things through that prism, and pretty much I'm going to talk to you about all 5 of these, and then I'm going to release you out into the rain to go on your adventure. And of course, at any point, you can always come back here and hang out with me. But for our first little hangout, because you're curious about the office, I want to talk a little bit, and I'm going to show you. I've been printing out some things and trying to add to the collection to make myself useful. So for each of the 5 things, I'm going to show you what I think I'm going to include. And you can tell me if it's good or not, if you think I'm going to get fired or not. I hope I'm not going to get fired. Jesus. Okay. Let's start with the first one. We embrace the sublime, not by mastering it, but by honoring and engaging with it. So, this is what I think I'm going to add to the collection. Let me get it. Hold on. Yeah. I printed this off the internet. How cool is that? This is it. You see it? Yeah, these are big things. So there's a quote from Edmund Burke, and check this out. This dude was writing this in 1757. That year, they still had horses. They were going to war on horses and shooting each other with muskets. That's when he wrote this. He wrote that terror is, in all cases whatsoever, either openly or latently the ruling principle of the sublime. That is going in the archive. Oh yeah. Why I think that's quite gothic is because it acknowledges that fundamentally baked into life, like, we don't live in 1757. You and I probably don't. I don't know about you, I shouldn't speak for you. But no matter when you live, in the 2020 somethings, whenever, it acknowledges that terror is a fundamental part of life. And it could be in the open form. I've got this tornado. Like, that's terror. And we shouldn't experience too much of that. It's not good for us. But it happens. But then there's also the more, he calls it latent terror. And I've put a picture of the Grand Canyon. And I've labeled them both big things. Big things. Because even with the Grand Canyon, there's that feeling of the sublime because it's huge. And it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. But there's also a terror because it's something that is so vastly bigger than you that makes you so small and vulnerable. creates this feeling of like, if I'm not careful, this could really hurt me. This is wild nature. This is the elements. And they could get me. This is important because no matter how much we industrialize and strive to protect ourselves, this stuff comes for us. All of us. It does. And we have to acknowledge that. And I think that we actually have either an attraction to or like a desire to pay attention to a situation or a dynamic or a big thing that could hurt us. And we are drawn to the truly awesome, the awe-inspiring. Okay, I put the picture down, but I think that sometimes encountering groups of people can be kind of sublime. Like large groups of people. Like one time I went to a summer camp. I worked at a summer camp. And I walked in, I was very young, and it was all these people. And it was jarring. I didn't expect that many people. And it's like, are they gonna open up to me and like let me in? Or are they gonna like hurt me? And I think it's a natural reaction. But just like with people, you can't control things. You can just engage. One of the real lessons of Gothicness, especially Gothic literature, is that you can try and control something, but you can't, and it's gonna get you anyway. It's gonna get us all anyway. So, Gothic thinking can really help us process that reality, which is important to process, and embrace it. And embrace the challenge and engagement of the sublime. So, yeah, what do you think about that? Truly Gothic. So I think I'm going to put that picture in the archive and put that quote in the archive. I think that'll be good. But I have something else for number 2. And it kind of segues. Is that a word? Is that a word? A segue? Isn't that the thing people ride on? That's both true, isn't it? Segue. It segues into the next thing. I don't know how to use that word. Okay. Number 2. Moving on. Okay, number 2. We recognize the limits of rationality. This might be my favorite. We recognize the limits of rationality because complexity is real. Oh, it's real. Oh, it's real. There is pretty much a giant beacon of literature that shines through the darkness to deliver us a massive warning about the limits of rationality, and that is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Yes, of course. You were not going to come in here and get away with not hearing Frankenstein said at least a few times. So this is time number 1, because yes, oh no, you're going to be hearing about Mary Shelley. Would you like more coffee? You're okay? Alright. If you want some more coffee, let me know. Actually, these pictures reminded me of the job I had before this. I would print a lot at work just to get up out of my desk. It was a corporate job, and I had to go print out things just to look busy. And I really came to love printing things. I print photos, I print these, so I can thank my corporate job for that. Okay, check out this thing. I really like this. At the top, the first picture is Victor Frankenstein, and he's looking at the monster up in the cliffs, up in the mountains. And the second one is a hand holding a compact mirror that's open, and a cell phone camera is pointed at it. And on the bottom I wrote, "What do we make and what do we see?" Question mark. How do you like that? It's very poetic, huh? I know. Frankenstein's one of my favorite books of all time. I had an amazing teacher in high school who let me read that instead of The Count of Monte Cristo. So I was very spoiled. I'm very spoiled. I'm gonna put this yeah, she wrote a quote for her protagonist. That's a weird way of saying it. Pretty much, her protagonist, Victor Frankenstein, said the following. He said that, "Learn from me, if not my precepts, at least by my example, how dangerous is the acquirement of knowledge." And he said that because, of course, he makes this creature because he's compelled to make life. And then, of course, it happens. And I'm tempted to say that it's not the knowledge, his knowledge, that's the issue. It's that because that first level of applying your knowledge is not enough. Like, he has rationality. That's how he's able to build a creature. He's able to make life. But he has, like, no emotional tools. He has no nurturing. He doesn't have compassion or cognitive flexibility or that openness to both love but also fear and confusion. So he can't handle any of that. His science brain is just, that's it. He made transcendent life and he couldn't handle it. He didn't have the tools. Rationality is not enough. It isn't enough. Logic and knowledge, I don't think it's acquiring knowledge that's the problem. It makes sense that he's saying that because he views the world very limitedly, this guy. But yeah, rational thinking is just one tool. It's not enough because in truth things operate on really complicated levels that we don't understand yet, but we are able to navigate intuitively and messily. We're able to go through life. That's how anyone raises children at all. You just do it and it happens. You get a dog, you get an animal, you do it and you figure it out, and you have to use all your faculties to kind of make that happen. So I think Frankenstein is an amazing story, and I want those images to be in the archive. And why I included the image of the compact mirror being open and a phone pointed at it is because I think, like Victor Frankenstein, he faces off with his creature. We face off with ourselves, our self-image, the things that we make as human beings all the time, and the kind of things we sculpt in digital space. And sometimes we don't know how to handle those, and you're just like, I'm gonna delete my whole profile, or I don't know what to do, I don't know how to handle complexity of other people, So it's just to say that story of Frankenstein, it can be applied to our condition of making anything at all, making another image, and sometimes suffering from not having the tools to work with that image. Wow, the rain's really coming down. There are sirens a lot. It's very Gotham City outside of here. Well, let's look at number 3, because I think that maybe has some answers for what we're up against. Number 3 is that it's okay to be sad and melancholic, and when you share that sadness and melancholy, it creates culture and connection and art. Yeah. Speaking of Frankenstein, I wrote something down. So even the creature said, quote, "I am alone and miserable. Man will not associate with me, but one as deformed and horrible as myself would not deny herself to me." He says that because he's lonely and he wants company, lady company, someone who's like himself, so that they can both have some love, and experience love together. His condition is one of sadness, and he acknowledges that sadness, and sadness is important and inevitable, and if you're feeling rejected in this world, or like you don't fit in, that's important to acknowledge and to kind of get to the bottom of, or at least, be conscious about. And a huge part of Gothicness is this feeling of being an outsider, a weirdo, not understood at all, But yeah, when you figure out the particulars of that, you can transform it into art, like writing or painting or making music, and finding others to do that with. And of course, that's how you get subculture. That's how you get community, which is really important. Community is not antithetical to feeling like an outcast. Both can exist at the same time, and you can feel like an outcast, and you can feel very sad personally, quite intimately sad around other people, and with other people, and that can be better sometimes than being completely alone. Frankenstein in part is about the agony of being alone, not having anyone. So connection alleviates you. You don't have to abandon sadness completely in order to move through life. You can kind of be, you can have sadness. And you can kind of move through the world with other people in a way that can be quite interesting, and you can transform that into generative feelings. So the image that I have printed, I think I'm going to include it in the archive. Here it is. I'm going to show you. This would be leaves on the ground together. Leaves on the ground together. This is important because I think sometimes people equate goth with nihilism or antisocial personalities, antisocial behavior, but goth, I think of it as communal. It's a true subculture, but I think gothicness can be about connection, and the consequences of not connecting. Like connecting over coffee. Right? Speaking of coffee. Oh, I see. Let me top you off a little bit. It's pretty good, right? It gets better as you drink it. Yeah. Okay. Still doing good? Okay. Let's go to our next idea. Let's do it. The next Gothic idea is that human nature is not just dual or singular, but it's prismatic, multimodal, or enter whatever ambiguous metaphor you would like. So, how is that Gothic? Well, that's a very good question. Thank you for asking that question. I would like to show you a picture that I've printed from the internet. This is of Robert Louis Stevenson, and this is from the year 1885. Check this out. In this picture, he is sitting at a desk, he's writing, and he's looking up at the camera with very sharp eyebrows in his black coat. Is he Gothic? I don't know. Is this picture Gothic? Yeah, I would say yeah. Looks like it to me. He wrote, of course, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I think, or something like that. He's a great example of contradictions within people, where you can have this dual nature, this nature that's, there's something insidious. And of course, because it's a literary device, you have two. You've got like good, bad, good, bad. And Edgar Allan Poe also did something similar. He wrote this short story called William Wilson, in which he said this quote, which I'm gonna add to our archive. He said, "And then came the full knowledge of my crime, the consciousness of my other self, the other self who sought to dethrone me." He wrote that in 1839. That was when they were still dressing really black and woeful, like, yeah. nobody was wearing Adidas, you know what I mean? It was like this stuff, it was just tights and long black coats, right? This kind of dual nature is really popular because it's just simple. So it's used in literature to just represent, good, bad, good, evil, a kind of fight, the devil and the angel. Now, in a positive way, I don't think it's just saying that we're capable of bad things. I think it also is saying that if we collapse our complexity down into a flat 2D paper version of ourselves, that complexity will leak out in the form of destructive behavior, or a haunting, or a ghost. So Gothic can kind of teach us a lesson that maybe we should try to be open. It's a cautionary tale, and maybe be more honest. Maybe be more honest about what we feel, and allow complexity out in a more productive, generative way. Maybe we should not kid ourselves that we are X or Y, but that we are the full alphabet. Yes, that's what I will say. It really leads quite well into the last thing that I'm going to talk about. And that's the final idea that there is beauty in age, evolution, and decay, and that all things decay, except for that fundamental generative element, which is probably love, but I do not know. And I don't know. Well, I don't know what it is. I think that we are, of course, capable of collapse or expansion, which will produce unintended consequences that we can't see, and spontaneous results in our lives. It's responsible for the results. If you collapse, life will happen, and if you expand, life will still happen. It happens regardless. So there is a beauty in exploring all of it, even decay, the decay of an old self, or like a potential self that never got realized. I don't think there's any need to bury that or be ashamed of it. No need to cover all that up. There is beauty there. And the Gothic is concerned with beauty and even craves it, and sees people and places and old artifacts as beautiful, even when they've been somewhat neglected by the gaze of modernity, which tends to value youth and success and, fill in the blank. Like, we gotta know, that I think is why the mission of the kind of office of Gothic Thoughts is to preserve all the things that are beautiful, like Edgar Allan Poe and crunchy flowers. Do you hear them? They're quite dusty. And all that stuff, because it reflects a major part of who we are as people. And instead of pushing it away, we use it as adornment, aesthetically and decoratively, and as fashion. And we feel better because it's not caged inside of us. It's out. And it feels very good. If that makes any sense. That was a lot, huh? It was a lot of Gothic things. I have one final image for you. Speaking of maternity, this is the rose petal, the wilted rose emoji. I love this. This, funny enough, is interesting. Emojis are a product of modern communication styles, and it's interesting to have emojis for sadness. Poetic, Gothic emojis for sadness. worth preserving, honestly, worth keeping, so I printed that out so we could keep it. Yeah. I'd say that the pop rocks are probably not Gothic, judging by what we've discussed today, but you are allowed to make your own conclusions. Should we have some? Wow. They taste good. I'm sending the rest home with you. Enjoy that. Something fun for you to do on your walk home. Funny enough, someone's looking out for you because the rain is starting to really quiet. Yeah, and the wind has died down. So, thank you so much for visiting me. You can hang out here for a while if you want to finish your coffee with me. That'd be nice. Get you more candy and you can take the rest home with you. But thank you for keeping me company and letting me talk about the Gothic thoughts that I've been trying to preserve. Let's hope I still have this job soon. I don't know. We'll see. I'm gonna do my best, but thank you so much again. Thank you for listening. I'm gonna go get us more snacks, and I will see you in a bit.